The True Ambition podcast with John Zink is brought to you by IT Avalon. IT Avalon, IT staffing and professional services done right. Visit our sponsor at itavalon.com. Now, welcome to True Ambition.
Welcome, everybody, to the True Ambition podcast. My name is John Zink, and I am joined today by Mr. Robert Smith. And appreciate you being here today, Robert. Robert is a former NFL running back, and he is the founder and CEO of a company called Fan Health Network. And he is also a sports commentator and analyst. So appreciate you being here today, Robert. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for inviting me on.
You bet. It's a pleasure. You know I'm a big Vikings fan, and we talk about that often. So year's not going that great this year, but, you know, we still got a chance for the playoffs.
Still got a chance, right? Still playing.
Yep. So I was doing some research, and I already knew some of this stuff, but all-time NFL record for average yards per touchdown, 27.2 yards. I didn't know that before. That's awesome.
It's a record I owe to Leroy Horde, actually, because Leroy would come in the game, you know, inside the 10-yard line for like 3 years. So I had to score from outside the 10-yard line, and had some really long ones, didn't have a lot of short ones.
Well, also a two-time Pro Bowler, NFL Alumni Running Back of the Year in 2000, and Big Ten Freshman of the Year in 1990. First player to win Ohio's Mr. Football Award in 88 and 89. And my next-door neighbor is a guy named Gary Owen. He's a stand-up comic, and he's an Ohio guy. So when I told him I was talking to you, he said, I don't care about all that pro stuff. You talk to him about Euclid, Ohio.
Is Gary from the Cleveland area?
Yeah. Okay. So he's a pretty big stand-up comic. He's going to be on here, I think, in, I don't know, about 4 or 5 weeks. He'll be on here doing the podcast as well. So he was super excited I was talking to you.
Nice.
Actually, a couple of the questions I got on here came straight out of his mouth.
Okay. That works.
So born in Euclid, Ohio, lives in Texas. And how old are your kids?
My daughter is 10 and my son is 8.
So you're a busy guy.
Busy guy. That's right in the thick of it, you know? But I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, it's such a great age. You know, they're really starting to come into their own, and you know, my son's just a little maniac, and he's starting to get more and more into different sports. But the coolest thing is, to me, he still likes to have stuffed animal fights, and like when we're walking into a store or a mall together, he still wants to hold my hand. It's just the greatest thing in the world.
I got a neighbor that lives down the street. His name's Steven. And him and I were talking. His kid is teenage years, somewhere around 14 or 15. And we were talking the other day because my little boy Johnny is 2 years old and just holding his hand, walking and stuff. And my friend Steven saw us, and him and I were talking later that night. He goes, I remember the day that I was standing in Target and he wouldn't hold my hand anymore. You know, and he said it with just this sadness in his face where it's just like, you know, that day's coming one of these days.
Yeah, you know that it comes at some point, but it's just part of it, right? I mean, It's the march of time, and you love to see them grow up and understand that at some point it just gets to a different place for them. And you know, unfortunately, I lost my mother back in 2016. And, you know, right up until she died, whenever she introduced me, I was still her baby because I was the youngest.
Yeah.
And I miss hearing that. So, you know, I think there's a time where you appreciate your parents a little bit differently, especially when you become a parent. But you understand that everybody goes through phases, and you want to see your children grow up and you want to see them mature.
Yeah. How many siblings do you have?
Well, unfortunately, I only had one brother, and he passed away back in 2017.
Okay. Well, sorry about that. Now, you and I met at the Gene Upshaw golf fundraiser in Tahoe, and it was funny because I walked in, and like I said, I'm a big Vikings fan. I said, "Holy shit!" So I walked up to Robert Smith, and you were sitting there with your kids, and you and I started talking, and we had a lot in common. So we'll talk more about that here in a second. When did you realize when you were growing up that you were an athlete? When that kind of hit you that I think I might go after this.
Well, I mean, you just realize, for me, it was realizing that I was a lot faster than everybody else. And we would have track and field day at school, things like that, and I'd win everything. And ended up my first year actually competing officially with a real team when I was in the 5th grade, and I ran track that year. But I would play neighborhood football, and I guess I always knew that I was an athlete then. I just didn't officially start playing, a team sport until I was in the 5th grade.
Yeah, when I was preparing for this, I was just thinking, it's like, when a pro athlete, I mean, it's a whole different level of fast and of speed and of strength and things like that. And I'm just wondering, when all of a sudden you get that, because in the back of your brain for your kid, you're like, well, Johnny's a big dude, so I'm thinking in one day he's going to be like, just all of a sudden just hit that stride. I'm like, okay, when's that happen?
Yeah. And it's weird because when I first started playing, I started playing football the fall after that first year of track. So into my 6th grade year. And, to me, it was just kind of something to do in the off season of track. But the parents, I remember one guy in particular, his son was a running back on the team as well, Anthony Iosu, and his dad, would always say, "Well, you're going to be a professional football player someday." And it was just like, at that point, you're just so young, you're not even thinking about it.
Right.
You're not even thinking, yeah, well, I might have a chance to play professional football at some point. It was just something that never occurred to me, but. It's weird thinking back now. I was 11 years old when I first started playing organized football, and it was only 10 years till I was playing professional football. So it's kind of weird how that progression happens, but it's just something that's just so natural. I mean, you just keep playing, and if you do well at each level, then you can advance. But it almost seemed like it was something that was too good to be true to think that I could play professional football someday.
I think you already answered this before, but was football your first sport, or was it track like you were talking about before?
Yeah. So track was my first sport, and it was really my first love. I loved watching. And that it would have been 84. Would have been my 6th grade year after playing my first football season, and then getting into my 2nd season of track. And my brother and I, we'd sit and watch. All the races, and that was the 84 Olympics when Carl won 4 gold medals out there in LA. And, it's strange, man. That was 84. And, 9 years later, I'd be playing my first regular season NFL game in that same stadium, which is just amazing.
What was more fun for you? Just thinking back over all of it, was it high school? Was it college? Was it pro? I mean, what was, or is it all just kind of mixed together? I mean, what was actually more fun?
That's an interesting question. I just loved competing. And when you have an opportunity to compete against the very best, there are very few jobs where just by having it, you're considered one of the best in the world at something. And that's what NFL football is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was nerve-wracking, but it was also fun. High school football was fun because, it's people that you grew up around and with and went to school with. Now, in college, it's somewhat the same. But you're spread across a big campus, and you all make the decision to go someplace to play together, as opposed to people that are from your neighborhood. People that you knew since you were a little kid. So, they're all a little bit different, a little bit fun in their own ways. But it was always great to have the opportunity to just compete and try and do your best.
So thinking back to high school, I've got a couple of friends who were competitive high school football players. Do you still stay in contact with some of those guys that you played with in high school?
Oh yeah. One of my best man in my wedding, was one of my former teammates, and that's a great thing about Facebook. I know that a lot of people have a lot of bad things to say about it.
Right.
But, being able to stay in touch with a lot of high school friends, but there were a lot of them that I stayed in touch with anyway. But it just makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I got a friend of mine, Tim, out here. He went to Napa High School, and this Napa football team is like every year. They I don't know if they recruit or what they do, but they always have a great team. And he's always talking about the glory days back there, and he talks about this guy and that guy. And one of the guys is in the NFL Hall of Fame, and he was invited to the NFL Hall of Fame induction ceremony. He couldn't go, and he's just like, it was just one of those questions that I thought about when I was thinking about Tim. I was like, well, I got to ask Robert if he's still in touch with all those guys. I'm sure it's a common theme with everybody who played competitive sports in high school and beyond. Who were some of the people over your early life that really motivated you or mentored you, as far as either coaches or teachers or someone like that?
Yeah. So when I started running track in the 5th grade, Frank Leopold was my first track coach, my first coach of any kind. And again, still stay connected on Facebook and everything like that. And, just really made a concerted effort to help me and my brother as well. My brother was running track, and we would run summer track together, and he would drive us to the meets. We would have meets in Michigan and down into West Virginia and all that kind of stuff. So did a lot of traveling. So he was really instrumental early, and he introduced me to his best friend, who was the football coach. He was my first football coach in the 6th grade. But so many great coaches and people that were influential. My high school coach, Tom Bank, is still alive, and he did such a great job because the pressure really started to mount. With the recruiting and all of the distractions, and he made a point really quickly to sit me down and say, "Hey, let's narrow this thing down to 5 schools. We'll tell everybody else thanks, but no thanks. It's going to take a lot off your plate, and it's really going to help you." But he was tremendous. And then all kinds of teachers. My 8th grade science teacher, Mr. Syracuse. I'd always loved science, but kind of the way that he presented it, and the way that he talked about life and improving your life, and always trying to stay focused and always trying to improve yourself and achieve. He was a great influence. My 10th grade geometry teacher actually ended up becoming a legal guardian for me for a year when I was in high school. So, just so many people that played such a tremendous role in my life, not only from inspiring me, but really mentoring and caring for me throughout my youth.
It's pretty amazing. I'm writing this book right now called True Ambition as well, and looking back on everything and just seeing all the different people and the different places that those people had to be in your life to let us end up in the situation we're in now is just amazing. I mean, just all the different pieces that had to line up perfectly, because life can take a turn on a dime, and just you can be flying off the edge. I mean, the amount of pressure, like you talked about before, with all of the recruiting and the different places that you were probably after you. I mean, that had to be a tremendous amount of pressure on you as a kid.
But again, going back to what Coach Bank did right away, a lot of it really wasn't even on me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Just because of what he did. Now, Michigan was recruiting me pretty heavily, and it's kind of funny. Ohio State colors are the colors of our biggest rival, or my biggest rival in high school, and we were blue and gold at Euclid. But I always told him there's no chance I'm going to Michigan. But Bo Schembechler invited me up for an unofficial visit, and he said, "I don't care if you're going or not. We're going up to Michigan to see Bo Schembechler." So we went up to see Bo. I was a senior.
That was actually one of the questions that my friend Tim said. You got to ask Robert, if he didn't go to Ohio State, what were the next couple of places he was considering?
Yeah, USC was second, and it was close. And ultimately, it came down to wanting my mother to be able to come see games, and she would ride down with a friend of ours from Cleveland to see the game. So she got a chance to see a lot of the games, and I'm just an Ohio guy, kind of through and through. And I figured at some point, that I'd want to live in Ohio and be in Ohio and work in Ohio. It's where I ended up starting my company, and I just have really strong ties there. So I really was never a California guy much, but USC, the allure of running back U, that was pretty close. And I sat out my second year at Ohio State and considered transferring. And I went and visited USC again, but I also went to visit Stanford, and that's how I ended up meeting Denny. And Denny didn't stay there another year. He was gone and into the NFL my last year at Ohio State. And then he called me up on draft day, and he said, "I'd let you get away once. I'm not going to let it happen."
Good old Denny, man. What a great coach, man. It's kind of a fabled thing that one of my questions on here was, were you a good student? I think that it's been said everywhere that, yes, you're a good student. What were your favorite subjects?
It wasn't even close. It was science in pretty much all of its forms. I was just always fascinated with science since I was a little kid. My mother was a registered nurse, so I was around hospitals a lot,
right?
And she would have her stethoscope and things like that, and saw some of the equipment.
What kind of nursing? What kind of nursing did she do?
Well, she did a lot. So she started off, as a floor nurse, but then she was a psych nurse. She ended up doing geriatrics. So she was in a lot of the fields.
Yeah, so much respect for them. I was a paramedic for a couple of years in this little town back in Illinois where I was, and man, the nurses, man, they're the ones that get things done.
We're in Illinois.
It's a really small town called Mount Carroll, Northwest Illinois, near Dubuque, Iowa.
Oh, okay.
But on the Illinois side. So town's about 1,500 people, called Mount Carroll. And there's one flashing light at a four-way stop and a Dairy Queen and a bunch of bars and churches. That's it. But
do you know where Sycamore is?
Oh yeah.
Sycamore far from there?
It's probably about 3 hours.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty far.
Yeah. 3 hours, 3 hours straight west of Chicago before you get into Iowa and Wisconsin is where Mount Carroll's at.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it was a great place to grow up, but just not much going on there unless you're a farmer. I baled hay when I was a kid, so that tells you kind of what was going on around there.
Did you tip cows?
It takes me back to Tommy Boy. No, I didn't tip any cows. What are we doing tonight? Oh, we're tipping cows. All you can handle, bro. So one of the questions I had on here, which you kind of talked about, was when you were playing at Ohio State, you sat out a year in 91 to run track. Now, one of the rumors that one of my guys heard was that your studies were kind of getting your practice for football was getting in the way of your studies, so you chose to go run track. Is that true?
Well, that's partially true. Actually, what happened is I was in a summer chemistry class.
Okay.
And there was a lab that interfered with practice. We had 3-a-days then, back in those days. And I literally had one of the coaches come to me after one of the practices, and he said, "We need you here at practice next week instead of class." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" And it was like, I don't want to be a part of this. I mean, and looking back at it, the guy was really just trying to bully me out of the program. And if I had it to do over again, I would have tried to stay in the program and made sure that everybody knew exactly what this guy was trying to do. But I don't regret it, just because I learned so much about the media. I learned about who your true friends are when you go through adversity like that. I learned so much from it. But I think if I had to do it again, in the sense of what it really could have meant to be a part of the program and make that stand, as opposed to being away from the program and trying to make that stand, I think it could have been handled differently. But when I was an angry 19-year-old, I didn't want any part of it.
Well, sometimes you got to stand up for what you believe in too. So I mean, there's different ways to look at it. When I heard that, I was like, well, that's a pretty cool thing, because a lot of people probably would have been like, okay, I'll be there, coach. No, it was pretty easy for me, and it just it caused a lot of controversy, and I think people made more of it than it should be, and that's not a surprise. It happens a lot in the media, and we see it even more now. But like I said, a lot of great lessons learned. So when you got drafted in the first round in '93, was it?
Yep.
Was your mom with you?
No, I was in my apartment with my two roommates.
Okay. And
I wasn't even watching anymore. I turned on Ren and Stimpy, actually.
Best show ever.
Yeah. So I was just, I thought, I can't remember if it was Miami. The Cowboys might have been picking around 12 or 15, and then Miami around that range. And neither one of them picked me. So I thought it might be a while. So I wasn't even watching it.
So what was it like when you did get the news you were going to the Vikings?
It was amazing. It was just so cool. And especially again, because it was Denny on the other end of the line. And Denny became like a father figure to me. He was actually at my wedding. And the opportunity to actually go and play for him, it just meant the world to me. Now, if any coach had called me, I would have been excited just to hear that call. But having it be Denny certainly made it even better.
Yeah, that was sad when he passed. He was one of my favorite coaches, in the NFL. He was just such a colorful character. He was so fun to listen to. What was it like to play for him?
It was incredible. I mean, Denny was such a great motivator. And I think that, you hear this a lot in coaching, that you can't treat everybody the same, but you have to be fair with everybody. And I think he just had a great sense of what it took to motivate different guys. You have a lot of different personalities. But he did a great job, I think, of managing some pretty big personalities that we had up there. I mean, between when I first got there, we had Jim McMahon and Chris Carter, and then it ended up being Warren Moon. And of course, Randy came into the mix in '98, and, he was able to kind of take all of those ingredients and still motivate guys. But more than anything, really emphasize the importance of team, and that you had to be united in a goal. And you had to understand your part in it. That's what Denny was always big on that. Know your role, accept your role, and be the best at your role. That was always something that he really made sure that we understood.
Well, it's a good segue into my next question, which was from the first time I met you, I consider you kind of a soft-spoken guy. You're respected, but you're just kind of soft-spoken, I would guess. What's it like playing with all those guys that have these big personalities that are, like I think of Randy Moss as being just this huge personality, and some of the other guys like John Randall, and some of these guys. What's it like being in that situation with those guys?
Well, first of all, you find this with a lot of guys, and Johnny Randall's one of them. Like, you meet Johnny off the field, and it's like just a very low key guy. But, a flip kind of gets switched, or the switch gets flipped, I should say, when we cross those lines, and, your personality and kind of your demeanor really change when it comes to game day and when it comes to being around your teammates and motivating guys. So it was fun for me. I never felt out of place with it because I wasn't the same on game day either. So
it's like an alter ego. It's like you come out there and you get to, yeah.
It was. I mean, you have to have a certain level of intensity to be able to play football, and especially at more physical positions. So that switch had better get flipped, or you're not going to last very long.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Did you know that Randy Moss was going to be as good as he was when you first met him?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's funny, in the locker room, we would watch ESPN in between meetings and things like that. And I remember seeing him scoring all these long touchdowns for Marshall. And then we got Randy all the way down at 21st, which was the same position I got drafted.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, well, this isn't going to be fair. And, we had Chris and Jake, Jake Reed, myself, Matthew Hatchett. We had a lot of really good players. And I remember after the first practice that I saw him in, somebody called me up over lunch and they said, how did Randy look? And just by the way that he moved, I'd been around a lot of great athletes. When I was at Ohio State, I was in a race with Carl Lewis. I'd played with Chris Carter. I had played with, all these great athletes and seen great athletes on the other side of the field, Dion. But there was just something different about the way that he moved in relation to everybody else, and the ease with which he caught the ball and accelerated and moved around people. It was stunning, really, to see it for the first time. And it was pretty clear that he was going to be something different and something special. And I remember telling the guys he's going to be a Hall of Famer if he stays healthy.
Well, it was that was my first year of becoming a Vikings fan, because I had recently moved to Minnesota, and my first game that I went to was his rookie season, and I watched you guys, and I was like, "This is the most exciting game that I've ever seen." It was amazing, and it was so much fun to watch you guys, and I when I was putting together this presentation and prepping for talking with you on this podcast today, my mind went back to sitting in a bar in Dubuque, Iowa, watching Gary Anderson miss that kick.
Oh,
and I went, oh God. And I just wondered, what was it like for all of you guys that year when there's a way more to it that happened than just Gary. Gary always gets the short end of the stick on that. But it's like, what was it like for you guys after that season when it was all over?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough, but you gain an understanding as a player that winning football games isn't easy, and the further you advance, the more difficult it is, and it's something that you deal with. I remember being in the locker room after the game, and a lot of guys crying, and I was on the verge of tears myself. And I remember, there weren't a lot of guys talking, but I thought it was my responsibility to speak to the media. And I remember, they said, "Well, how does it feel right now?" It's like, it's an awful feeling. It's a gut wrenching loss. But I said, if this is the worst thing that ever happens to me, I'm a lucky guy.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to keep those things in perspective.
What was behind your decision to retire at the top of your game, which I have a lot of respect for, by the way, but I wanted to hear straight from the horse's mouth. You're 2000. You're like, I'm done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes all the way back to 93. My rookie season, I'll never forget it. December 5th, up in Detroit, I tore my ACL, cracked the bottom of my femur, did some damage to the cartilage that kept wearing down over the years, and needed to get microfracture surgery, I believe, after the 98 season. And then after my last season. So my last season was the only season I didn't miss any games. didn't miss any games, but I still needed knee surgery after the year. And I was like, you can't keep doing this to yourself because, at some point I wanted to have kids. I wanted to be able to run around with them. Didn't want to be a 45-year-old knee replacement guy. Here I am at 48, still haven't had one and don't think I'll need one. So it really was about a decision to, as I've always said, it's better to walk away early than to limp away late. It was a nice clean break from the game because my contract was up and had my best season, didn't miss any games. And I really thought that if I had continued to play, I could have kind of crossed the line with the knee and taken it into a territory that, could have caused some severe damage long term.
That's awesome. Thank you for explaining that because, a lot of people are like, oh my God, he's walking away. All the Vikings fans are like, no, not Robert, at the time. So, but I had a lot of respect for it. Now, did you ever have any regrets? I mean, as far as that the years go by and you're watching football and you're seeing the guys go out there and play, did it ever go back and forth in your brain like, oh man, maybe I should go back. Maybe I should go back. Nothing like that?
The only time that I really, so that was 2001 when I retired, January. I got a call from Brian Billick in July or so, and Brian was trying to get me out of retirement. And of course, they had just won the Super Bowl. And he was a coach that I would have gone to play for. But again, thinking about the impact long term, I thought it was a better decision not to play anymore. And then when Denny took the job in Arizona, a few years later, I was thinking, might be nice to go back with Denny. But again, just kind of thinking about discretion being the better part of valor and thinking about my health long term, it made more sense to just stay away.
There's more to life than just the game and money. And look at you now. I mean, we're going to talk here in just a few minutes about Fan Health Network with what you're doing right now. And then my question is, how quickly did you get into sports analysis after you retired from football?
It took a few years because I had written a book, and after I wrote the book, I had an agent approach me about getting into the business, and it was something that I really hadn't thought of, but I missed the game more than I thought that I would. So it wasn't really a regret about, should I go back and play, but being around the game without having to get surgery all the time, and kind of analyzing the game and watching young players develop, watching teams come together, in a way that I think, football is unique in the amount of coordination that it takes, 11 guys at a time, but all phases of the game. Being around that, it was just incredible. So that's kind of how I got into it, but I didn't start at ESPN until 2005.
Well, you do a great job at it, and I enjoy any games that you're calling. So you've talked openly in the past about struggles with alcohol. You and I have known each other for a while, and you know about my story. I've got about 6.5 years sober, and it's a huge part of my backstory, and it's one of the things that you and I talked about initially when we met up in Truckee years ago. And there's something about those kind of issues that brings two people like you and I together. How long have you been sober?
Well, it'll be 9 years in May.
Well, congratulations.
God willing, right?
Oh, thank God. I tell you what, probably neither one of us would be here talking to each other without it.
Exactly.
So when did you realize that you had a problem with alcohol?
I mean, it didn't take long. I mean, it was really early in my drinking career that I knew I didn't drink like other people, had the family history. My mother and father both struggled with abuse, and I actually stayed away from it. I know you're supposed to in high school anyway, but your high school friends are doing it, and I never did it then, or I only did it a couple times. And, when I got into college, they call it a progressive illness for a reason. And as you're younger and you can bounce back, you can deal with some of the consequences of those heavy nights of drinking. And I knew all the way then that it was a problem. There were nights where, whether it's getting sick or getting yourself into a situation that you shouldn't have been in, it was pretty clear. But as I retired and didn't have anything to do, had a lot of time.
Oh yeah.
And I think the separation from the game, there's a part of you that misses that in a way, and you're kind of dealing with some of those emotions by self-medicating, and that became a real problem. And I knew that as I became a parent, that I couldn't have both. Like I can't be the father that I want to be and have alcohol in my life. It doesn't work that way for me.
Yeah, me neither. I was so lucky that Johnny came along after I quit drinking, because just I do everything to the extreme, and it was like when I drank, I didn't drink every day, but when I drank all of it.
Yep.
And it was on, because that's the kind of guy I am. And then I'd wake up the next morning and go, oh, what the hell happened? Then I tiptoe around my wife and go, everything okay?
Yeah.
But, luckily, God willing, Johnny will never have to see that guy. And I'll be able to be around for him. And, same thing for you with your kids. Now, did anyone ever confront you about your drinking, or were concerned about you or anything like that? Because I had a couple of those myself.
Yeah, my mother, definitely brought it up to me a number of times, and I just had other people say, it seemed like it's getting out of hand. But again, especially when you're young, or at least younger, and I think it can be even more difficult when somebody has achieved a level of success, and you think, well, I can overcome this, I can outthink this, I can do this, I can do that. I'll be able to find my own solutions to this. But, I think what you end up hearing from other people in recovery, so many things that are so true that, you kind of get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And, you see that even when you try different ways to drink, and you try and control, if you try and control it, you're not having as much fun. And if you don't control it, you're a danger to yourself and others. And again, you think about how you prioritize your life and what's most important to you. And becoming a parent was most important to me. And not being never being around my children and having alcohol. I mean, I wouldn't say that it was an easy decision, but just like we hear a lot of times, again, from people in recovery, the solution is simple, but it's not easy. So where you need to go. And I think it's just kind of people finding the path to others in recovery that can help them down that path.
Yeah, well, it's an easy decision now that I have like a clear head. But at the time when it's not clear and you're like, okay, how am I going to do this without having a drink on New Year's Eve? How am I going to do this without, it's just like, because so many years of the same behavior and those habits. And, it's so hard. I've talked to a couple of friends that, thank God that I'm not going through it right now in the middle of COVID, because everything is a lot tougher now. People go into Zoom meetings and other things like that. To whatever recovery people are going through, it's a lot tougher. The whole world's a lot tougher right now in this new normal we're going through with COVID. So, but where there's a will and there's a way. And what I say to people is like, if you're going through something, if you're having a tough time, ask somebody for help, because there's so many people out there that'll just, if you just ask them and you're willing, the answer is there. So I appreciate you talking about this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And as we learn from people in recovery and what they say, if you want to keep sobriety, you got to give it away. So, being able to share that message and inspire somebody and hopefully lead somebody to a better life without substances, then it's the greatest thing in the world that that you can have that kind of impact and help not just that person, but many times family and friends that are suffering with them as well.
So I got a tweet here from a while back, and I enjoyed it because it's kind of the way I think. That you said, "I am not an atheist, I'm an agnostic. I think it's a question beyond our understanding and certainly existing knowledge." I'm very much the same kind of thinker. I was raised a Methodist. There's a whole bunch of things that I believe in the religion that my mother brought me up in. And there's parts of it that I'm just like, I don't get it. Like I have a couple of people in my family who are gay. And as far as that religion's concerned, they're going straight to hell. I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. These are great people, you know? And there's a whole bunch of things that I just couldn't take along with me. And that was one of the problems with me when I got into recovery was, okay, how do I do this? And they tell me, well, you don't have to. You just have to find something bigger than yourself, and grab onto it. So one of my favorite bands out there is a band called Tool, and one of my favorite lyrics is, we barely know who or what came before this precious moment. Celebrate this chance to be alive and breathing. And that's kind of the way that I look at my sobriety and my God is that, I'm not sure exactly where I came from or why I'm here, but I better do the next right thing for myself, for my family, and for the whole community around me. And I just I saw that tweet, and I love the fact that you shared it with people, because there's a lot of people that are going, well, I don't know about recovery because I don't believe in God or I don't do this. And it's just like, you don't have to, you just find what works for you and what you can believe in and hold on with both hands, because if you do it the right way, you're going to have an amazing ride.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And it was definitely something that, and I think for a lot of people, you look for excuses not to follow certain paths, and I think that's part of it as well. But I think understanding spirituality and power is greater than ourselves. And look, there are different types of recovery. There are different paths to follow. But I was always told, by others in recovery that, don't worry about defining a God. Just understand that you're not God, and that you listen to the people that have recovered before you, and you follow that path, then you've got a pretty good chance.
Amen. So let's talk about Fan Health Network. So tell us, what is Fan Health Network?
So it was started with the idea of using the passion that people have for their favorite schools, teams, athletes, and other influencers to encourage them to live healthier lives in a very general sense. But I wanted to make this experience where people could have fun. I could see this convergence happening with digital health and social networking, and just the way that apps were a delivery mechanism where you could create these fun experiences where, in my original conception, it was, I want this thing to be American Idol meets Biggest Loser meets WebMD. Let's get people in these experiences. They could follow the athletes and influencers, see what they do to maintain their health, but that you can expose them to products and services that can really help them achieve those goals. And so now we've migrated into working with enterprise companies in the population health space. And their big problem is engaging these employee populations, especially middle-aged men, and trying to get people more proactive about their health. And before COVID, it wasn't talked about as much. Now it's talked about all the time, especially from a digital perspective. And so it's really exciting some of the opportunities that we have, some of the companies that we're going to be working with here in the near future. And we're also going to be doing some things on the consumer facing side as well through some schools and some professional teams. So it's been a tough journey, as you know. But now I've kind of reached this space where there's a combination of vision, of technology, and of a very experienced operator that I brought on as CEO. So I'm no longer going to be the CEO, but it's okay. There's no pride in names like that for me. It's more important that we create an unbelievable company and really service people. And my ultimate goal is to change the way that the world thinks about mental and physical well-being. And I think that with some of the partnerships that we have in place, that we've got an opportunity to at least make a dent.
So what, I know that you and I had talked before, your Fan Health Network is affiliated with the NFL Players Association. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, so the NFLPA, the union that represents NFL players, I've worked in some capacity with them since '94, my second year in the league. And I currently serve on the NFL Pension and Disability Board as a trustee appointed by the NFLPA. And the NFLPA has a venture arm. It used to be called One Team Collective. Now it's called One Team Partners. And it's a combination of the NFLPA, the MLBPA, WNBAPA, like the Lacrosse League, MLSPA. And it's a true venture arm now. And so we have an exclusive agreement through this One Team Partners. We're the only company that can use six or more current NFL players in these health initiatives. And it's a great advantage for us as we go out to the market and we work with these companies and say, look, if you want to get people excited about health and you want to get them motivated to get into these programs, let's have the Green Bay Packers fans versus the Vikings fans. Let's have Ohio State versus Michigan. Let's have all of these great rivalries and tap into that to get people excited and use that as the marquee. But then again, once they get in, find out what they need most to achieve whatever healthcare goals they may have, some that they don't even realize, get them a way to do it, and more importantly, stay engaged with it and keep them excited about it.
Yeah, us middle-aged men are kind of tough to wrangle in.
Yeah, definitely. Want to eat the same way we did when we were in our 20s and not work out.
Yeah, a salad, what's that? Well, that's great. What drives you now as a business owner?
Well, for me, it's really about creating a world-class company. And again, with your ultimate goal being to change the way that the world thinks about health and well-being. There are a lot of steps. So for me, it's not about notoriety. It's not about the money. It's about just creating a company that really impacts people's lives in a positive way. And it was just, since I was a kid, in wanting to work in science and applied science, it's always about trying to help people find solutions to happier living and better living. And to me, if we can positively impact companies and employees and even the world at large, then what else is there?
Yeah, go out and solve problems for people.
Yep.
And that's it. One of the last questions I had here for you was just kind of tying all of it together. What are the things that you learned as an athlete that help you out in business?
Well, things rarely go the way you want them to go. There's a saying in the military that a battle plan rarely survives contact with the enemy. And when you're starting a business, you think you're going to be going this way, and then you end up going that way, and then you get a no here. But going back to your athlete days, if you stay dedicated, you keep motivated, you keep working hard, in the right way, then you can achieve whatever your goals may be. So I think, really that tenacity and toughness that you get from playing in sports, and ultimately you can't win them all, but you have to keep coming back and fighting. So I think that's a really important part of it. And also understanding that one person doesn't do it, that it takes a team. And, the best teams and the best coaching staffs, they're not dictatorships. There's a shared vision, and there are a lot of different paths that get considered, but ultimately you come together for one goal.
Yeah, that's something that took me a while to learn. I own an IT staffing business, and, first 3 years were just like, boom, like a rocket ship, right? And then it just levels off and stays there. I was trying to do everything myself, right? And, you don't know what you don't know. So as soon as I got to a point, I stayed there for about 2 or 3 years and then started hiring some really good people to come in and do things better than I could do. And, all of a sudden, as soon as I brought in those people that I could plug into those spots that did those things better than I did, then everything just took off. But, you don't know until you get to that point, and you kind of have to go through some failures before you can succeed on the other side.
Yep.
So who is the new CEO?
David Donovic.
Okay. And
David had started off at Microsoft, and, he actually was on like the 365 team, and didn't want to be at Microsoft his whole life. So he went off and started his own business. He's actually built and sold a couple businesses already, but great deal of experience in population health, and just a brilliant guy. He's only 36 years old, and he's just an absolute ace.
The final question that I ask everybody on the True Ambition podcast is about their true ambition. So, being where you've been, going through what you've gone through, knowing what you know now, what is your true ambition in your personal life and in your professional life?
Well, the personal life side of it is easy, and that's just to be the best parent that I can be to my children. And, they're such good kids. And, what gets really fun as your kids get older and as little Johnny gets older, you'll start to have these conversations, and you're just kind of blown away by how quickly they develop personalities. I mean, I know he already has personality, but develops, a world view. And now as I talk to my kids and I, try and teach them, and, it's funny, before I had kids, I always thought I would be too easy on a daughter and too hard on a son. And you just kind of learn, what it is that you need to give children as they grow. And ultimately, your job as a parent is to prepare them for times when you're not around to help them. And quite frankly, ultimately, the time when you're just gone. And as morbid as that sounds, you love your kids, as best you can. You try and be there for them as best you can in an intelligent way. And ultimately, that's my greatest goal, from a personal standpoint, is just to always be the best father that I can be. And on a professional level, it's to create the best company that I possibly can. And again, with a goal that's, a bit high on the ambition side, to change the way that the world thinks about mental and physical well-being. I've got my work cut out for me, but I don't mind, because again, to me, life is about improving the life of as many other people as you can in the time that you have. And none of us know how long that is.
You got to go out there and shake it up, baby.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, I appreciate you being here, Robert. I want you to enjoy the holidays and just have the best time with the kids. And I guess I'll just end it by saying skål.
Skål, baby.
That's it. All right. I'll talk to you later, Robert. Thanks so much, man.
The True Ambition podcast is brought to you by IT Avalon. For more information and links to other episodes, please visit www.trueambition.org. Now, go find your true ambition.